Hello gamers, welcome back to the Armbar arcade. I'm Nay, and it's time to delve back into Sega's retro gaming franchises. That's right, in contrast to the PS4 plays we've been doing recently, it's time for Super Fantasy Zone on the Mega Drive. So yeah, let's get into it. This is Super Fantasy Zone. It's the first Mega Drive installment of the Fantasy Zone series. I was first introduced to the Fantasy Zone series via Shenmue, which has collectible capsule toys which Ryo can buy, and one of the sets is the Fantasy Zone set, which has Jet Oppa Oppa and Oppa Oppa, which are these little flying ships who are kind of the main characters of the Fantasy Zone series, if you can call them characters. And it has a few other things, I think, from the series in one of its Sega based sets. It's got some Space Harrier stuff and like Outrun and most of AM2's video game related stuff, seeing as Yu Suzuki was the sort of creator of Shenmue. But it's a fun little game and kind of underrated. No one really talks about it outside of, I mean, it's a minigame in Yakuza. That's about as much as people have talked about it recently. Oh, we've got to avoid this one. It's quite difficult, I will admit. It's not the easiest thing. As soon as you're touched by anything, you explode. And there's bosses which come in the form of this sort of thing, and you just have to shoot them and avoid whatever they do to you. If you don't avoid it, you explode. Basically, there's a theme here. If you get hit by stuff, you explode. So make sure not to get hit by stuff. Obviously, we can buy the extra ships later on, so it's not too bad if we lose some lives, but ideally, we don't really want to be losing too many lives early on, because I think there's 7 or so levels and then a boss rush, and yeah, already it's sounding very difficult, but we're going to get as far as we can in today's plays video. Wanted to do something a little bit unconventional, I guess, because I had the Mega Drive on. I've been playing a little bit of Streets of Rage. Convenient moment for that to happen. Yes, I've been playing a bit of Streets of Rage and some other things, a little bit of Golden Axe and some other retro games, and I thought, you know what I really like on the Mega Drive? Super Fantasy Zone. It's probably the best Fantasy Zone game, because after this there wasn't really much. So you've got Fantasy Zone the original, which is really hard. It's kind of 8-bit hard, you know, classically NES Master System hard. Not that this isn't, but it's even harder. And obviously the 8-way pad on the Master System gamepad is just kind of broken, so it's even harder to direct your ship and avoid stuff on the Master System. Fantasy Zone the Maze just isn't really a thing that you want to be playing. It's kind of different gameplay to Fantasy Zone, and we keep getting hit by stuff, so that's not very good. He's nearly done. He's nearly done. We just need a few more hits and we should be able to explode him into a burst of coins. There we go. Loads of coins, so we're going to save those up for the shop for sure. We're going to buy ourselves some lives, and we didn't quite get all of them, but that's okay. You're not really supposed to get all of them. I think you can if you're very, very good at the game. We're going to go into the shop and see what we can buy. We can get the big wings. We're going to get probably not any of these because they're too fast. I feel like the maneuverability really suffers when you get the big speed engines. And we get the laser beam because that's useful. We get an extra ship. Now there are bombs, which is the secondary weapon. They're useful on some of the other bosses. I don't find them super useful on many of the bases that you have to destroy, so we're not going to get any of those just yet. And I think that's it for now. We'll go with that. We've got $14,000 left, so we'll save it for now. We're going to need some lives. Anyway, the laser beam is pretty overpowered. You can just sort of run through everything. But it is time limited, so we need to collect those coins and keep moving and keep destroying these bases. So yeah, it's weird because I'm not a big fan of shoot 'em ups. Like, I know it's not a conventional shoot 'em up, but I've never been a massive fan of conventional shoot 'em ups. Yeah, especially all the early NES shoot 'em ups that are just kind of, they're hard as nails, and there's not really much other concept to them other than they're in space and you have to shoot stuff and it's all coming toward you, and like it almost becomes a bullet hell sort of thing. I'm much more in favour of like the cute 'em up weird world kind of stuff. Like, it's got some banging tunes on this game as well, like especially the boss themes, they're really good. Like, the concept's great. Like here, this boss concept, it fires obviously alternate angles, so you have to just avoid those angles. but you can damage the lasers on its side when they're not firing or when you're not being hit by them. So you need to make sure you're not being hit by them. We're being hit by them, but if you can avoid them, obviously it's a great boss concept in the, you know, with a little bit of practice it's kind of easy to beat, whereas a lot of other ones in shoot 'em ups are kind of like, yeah, just keep shooting it until it expires, really, which I guess is what we're doing, but there's a little bit more to it. And obviously once there's a gap, you can shoot in that gap without real fear of being hit, which is great. It does start rotating after a little while, which makes it a little bit harder, but you know, we like a little challenge. We don't like a huge amount of challenge here. Well, I don't like a huge amount of challenge here in the Armbar arcade. Maybe Adam does, I'm not sure. But yeah, the boss designs are really great. I mean, I've always found Sega boss designs from this era to be really good. There's a boss in Space Harrier 2 based on the Flatwoods monster, which is really cool. Stuff like that just kind of piques my interest, you know, with video games. Kind of folklore style bosses. It's a very Japanese thing to do. And yeah, it takes a lot of pressing. This is the only downside to Fantasy Zone, is you need to really punish your controller to get the most out of it. We're going to go over the other side now, that's another, oh dear. Well, I was going to say, it's another thing I really like, is you can kind of turn your ship and face whatever way you want. It's not just right scrolling or left scrolling. The screen wraps around, which is great. We're going to give that another go, I think. I haven't shown you off as much of the game as I would like to. It is difficult. That's the only thing that I think, like, it takes a little bit of practice. I believe there was a remaster of Fantasy Zone 1 and 2 for the 3DS when they were doing their Sega 3D classics. Both of those were really good because you could save up all the money that you got from previous runs and use it in your next run. So I actually ended up completing the original Fantasy Zone, and I'm pretty sure it was Fantasy Zone 2 was the other one. Same for Sonic the Hedgehog. A lot of them, like, games that you wouldn't really want to complete in one sitting because they're quite tough on the amount of lives you're given. It's a little bit of a kind of modern, you know, here, have a save state and just enjoy the game for what it is, rather than being time limited and life limited, which I know some people enjoy. You know, it's the whole get good thing, but I think if you can enjoy a game by saving your progress a little bit and making it easier for yourself, why wouldn't you do that? I mean, modern games do it. I think early games really were only difficult just to pad them out. I mean, if this was easy, I would probably be able to run through it in about 20 minutes, which would be not no fun, but it would be fun once, whereas it's quite a lot of fun just to see how far I can get, and usually it's not super far, but we can definitely get to the third world, if not the fourth, I think. I would hope. Anyway, let's do a bit better with this boss this time. You know, we've got all our lives intact. We just need to not be hit by his missiles or whatever he sends out. We get too close to them, I think, is the problem. We need to be more in the corners of the screen. There's a bit of strategy going on, but it's not like super strategy. There's some shoot 'em ups where you have to learn exactly where you need to be at every single point, and I'm just not a big fan of that, really. Oh, there goes the other one, and we can get back in position. I could use the bombs. That's one thing I could do if I try and use our secondary weapon, but then we're a little bit, depending on the angle of what he sends out, we might be a little bit vulnerable to that. But let's try the bombs as a sort of secondary strategy. I think it is working a little bit better, actually, with the bombs. Oh, there we go. We've missed him there, but he becomes invincible for a second while he disappears, and then he comes back. There we go, though. We're going to try and collect up more money than last time so that we've got a better chance of good things in the shop. Much better. We've got $35,000 this time. I'm going to try and destroy a couple of bases before the shop comes in, but it comes in very quickly. I do like the shop theme here. The classic shop theme from the first Fantasy Zone just cannot be beaten. Maybe I'll put a little bit of that behind this little segment as we buy some stuff. Let's check out the 7-way shot. That's always a good thing. We're going to get a smart bomb as well, and an extra ship, and maybe another extra ship once we get enough money. So there we go. We are fully stocked up now from the shop. We shouldn't really struggle to destroy some of these bases now. It's one of those games you just keep running through and getting a little bit further each time, which obviously is handy when you save up all the money on the 3DS version, because these little things that go around the level get harder and harder. Like they do have patterns, but the patterns are a little bit random, and it just ends up catching you out, and it's one of those sort of frustrating games where you think, no, next time I'm not going to fall for that. But you do. You always do. You always fall for it. Well, I do anyway. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but shoot 'em ups aren't really my genre, but I guess I have a few games in each genre that are my games for that genre. So this is my shoot 'em up. I'm not great at it, obviously, because I keep dying, but maybe that's because I'm also trying to express my like for the game at the same time. So yeah, I like the parallax sort of scrolling in the backgrounds. We've got, I guess it's parallax. No, yeah, it's sort of a very simple parallax scroll as far as I'm aware. You can correct me if I'm wrong on that. So we need to get above him and then drop this heavy bomb on him. So we need to, I was going to say we need to avoid instantly getting shot, and what happens? We instantly get shot. Back to the beginning. Okay, we're going to have one more run through. We're going to see if we can't get to that elusive third level. It is quite difficult. I mean, it's coming back to it. Like, I did have a little period of like just playing this on and off, and I got a lot better at it. You know, you could just get to the third level without really thinking about it. But at the third level, you start to get these really annoying little things that start moving around the level, and you think, is it worth it really? Is it worth getting to the third level just to have this? Like, they get faster as well. It's obviously you're supposed to use like the rocket wings and all that, but it gets harder to control, and like, I don't know, precise controls with stuff flying all over the screen it's starting to get a bit bullet hell, but it's kind of, it's fair bullet hell. Like, it's not unfairly putting loads of stuff on the screen. It's just your reactions, you can't react fast enough to it. You just have to kind of go, oh yeah, no, I did miss that. It has literally crashed into me. And it's kind of like every hitbox is pixel perfect, so if you get very slightly hit by something, you've still been hit by it. Like, it's not like you can try and get away with it like, I guess, like a PS1 game or something like that. They've really drawn around the sprites, and if you get even touch the edge of something, which I guess is fair, but every now and then you just want to scrape by something. Oh, it was so close. There we go, we should get to the boss now. You have to sort of clear the screen of enemies before you get to the boss, so these guys hanging around aren't really much use to us. Now they're gone, we get to the jack-o'-lantern, or the pumpkin, or whatever you want to call him. That's it. And then avoid this one. We seem to do much better hitting him from the left, but he just comes so close to us sometimes. And the thing he fires obviously doesn't help. Just avoid this one. Right, we should be able to get him here. It's like sort of rapid fire. And if you remember those PS2 controllers that used to have like an auto rapid fire setting that would just constantly press the X button or whatever button you set it to, which was great for some games, but other games would just sort of constantly pause or just not really work with it. Usually third-party controllers had that. I remember having a Logitech controller for my PS2, sorry. And that, I mean, it had buttons that if you pressed them too hard, they just sort of went into the controller and never came back out, so that was a bit of a disadvantage to it. But it also had those turbo buttons that sort of, you wondered, are they useful? And then you'd find a game where like it was really overpowered for like, I guess, a fighting game or something like that. You'd be like, oh, these are amazing, like, you know, you can win easily at Tekken or something. But yeah, shoot 'em ups are kind of one of the games that they were designed for. I mean, I know you can get Mega Drive controllers with kind of auto fire things, which are great, I guess, for this, because it saves your fingers a lot of stress. I'm pretty sure you can also set the game to do an auto fire for you, but I don't know, it feels a bit cheap to just be going around shooting absolutely everything. I think I'll save that for the power-ups, like the 7-way shot and all that, where they are overpowered, but within the bounds of the game. Ah, those little things that they fire, man. Such a good run up until that point. But it's still a good run. We're going to go this way this time. I'm going to go in the shop and buy another life, just so we're back on the 4-life hype. Everything's just such a wacky kind of design. Like, there's these, I don't know, paperclip looking things, and this dragon which is on fire. And And the lantern. Oh, why would you go up there, dragon? Why are you trying to... Why are you doing me like that, man? The ultimate frustration game from the... I mean, everything's frustrating from retro consoles, but I've always found Fantasy Zone to have a special place in the kind of... Oh, if only I hadn't, you know, moved up at that exact point, or if only that tiny thing that I didn't see. Like, look at that little blue thing. If you're really concentrating on the game, you might not even see it, and then that's it. You've lost a life just because this little blue thing's hit you. There's so many little blue things on screen. Go away, paper clips. We don't need you today. We don't need office stationery. This isn't an office. Okay, so we have lost the heavy bomb, which means that we can't kill the boss with it. I guess that's the trade-off from the heavy bomb, is like, you can hold on to it, but like you'll need to make it to the boss to actually use it. And obviously the shop comes up pretty early on. We're just going to have to avoid these laser beams. Thing is as well, if you change the direction, obviously I'm trying to move around, sometimes you'll find yourself just firing to the left even though you're trying to fire at the boss, but you've just done a little steering adjustment and you've been firing at nothing for the past 5 minutes. So yeah, I mean, little frustrations with it, but it's such a good little concept for a game, and it's so cutesy that, you know, you have to kind of forgive it with its bright colours and its awesome music. Just got to be careful here though, because obviously where the cannons are missing, you don't see the firing pattern quite as well. So it's a very clever boss in that it gets more difficult as it goes along because it starts rotating and all that. But also it gets difficult because you've destroyed parts of it and they were helping you see where it was going to fire next. So you just have to kind of watch out for those bits of it. And we were doing okay. You know, I had to say, oh, we're doing okay, and then we weren't doing okay. Yeah, I love the aesthetic of the game, I love the design of the game, the music, everything's so good. So, Fantasy Zone, if you haven't played it before, you can play it on the PS2. I think there's a remake of Fantasy Zone, or Super Fantasy Zone, on the Sega Classics collection. Not the Mega Drive collection, the actual Sega Classics collection, which features some weird stuff. It's got like Super Monaco Grand Prix, Bonanza Bros featuring Tan R, Columns, of course it's got Columns. But it's weirder than the Mega Drive collection. There's not as much good stuff on it, but one of the... Okay. Alright. Fine. One of the really good things on it is a remake of Fantasy Zone. I think that's kind of one of the reasons you want it. It has a 3D mode, which isn't really that good, but I think it also has a not in 3D mode. So you want to play that, and... yeah, I guess it's a little bit easier as well. Like, these classic versions tend to be kind of the hardest ones because there's no save states or retries or that sort of thing, which some people like. Some people like to, you know, say, oh, get good at it. I was once better at it, actually, and having to talk whilst playing, not recommended, but I didn't want to do commentary and post because it is such a frenetic game, and I had a fair few things to say about it off the top of my head that I wanted to remember. So just gonna get hit by a laser here to end this episode of Armbar Arcade Plays Super Fantasy Zone. Yeah, leave in the comments those games from genres that you don't like, but you do like the game. So this is my shoot 'em up. GoldenEye 64 is my first person shooter. Stuff like that. Leave a like if you liked several deaths and retro games. Subscribe if you're new here, and I will see you next time in the Armbar Arcade.